Hello, everyone. I'll give you a second to get connected to sound. Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1252nd New Social Environment. I'm Magali, a programs associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring George Abraham, Lana Barkawi, Moheb Soliman, and Cole Swensen. And now I'll introduce today's guests and hosts. George Abraham is a Palestinian American poet. Their debut poetry collection, Birthright, won the Arab American Book Award and was a Lambda Literary Award finalist. They're an editor at large with Mizna, where they also lead curation and editing of the Mizna Online literary space. Dr. Lana Barkawi is the executive and artistic director of Mizna, where she also serves as the publisher of Mizna, Sewanee Literature and Art, and producer of Mizna's Twin Cities Arab Film Festival. Under her leadership, Mizna has grown to become an award-winning organization with a national and transnational impact. Moheb Soliman is an interdisciplinary poet from Egypt and the Midwest, whose debut poetry collection, Homes, explores nature, modernity, identity, belonging, and sublimity through the Great Lakes bioregion borderland. He is an editor at large with Milkweed Editions and is the new executive editor and literary program director of Mizna. And our host today, Cole Swensen, is the author of 20 volumes of poetry, most recently and, which was longlisted for the Griffin Poetry Prize in a collection of critical essays, Noise That Stays Noise. She has translated over 20 volumes of poetry, prose, and art criticism from French and won the 2024 Alta National Translation Award and the 2025 Stephen Mitchell Translation Award. And with that, I will hand it over to Cole to get us started.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, George and Lana and Moheb for joining us today. We're really looking forward to this. The program, as those of you who have been here before know, is just an opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate the people who give up their own time to produce the poetry of others. And in this case, it's not just poetry, but it's literature and film. So we're really interested in hearing about that range today and how these things dovetail and support each other. We always start with readings by two of the three participants. The third participant will read at the end. And we just want to get poetry and literature immediately in the air. So we'll just go right to that. And I think we're hearing from George first.
Yes. Hi, y'all. Thanks for spending your early afternoons for some of us, evenings for some of us, here with us. I am going to read from Heaven Looks Like Us. This is a new Palestinian poetry anthology that Noor Hindi and I have been working on, and I think it's not officially a Mizna project, but it's kind of unofficially like the acknowledgement section has like a laundry list of decades of Mizna issues that these poems have previously appeared in. So I want to just pay homage to that and just name and articulate the many. I don't know. I don't think like when asked to kind of read my own individual work these days, I have a hard time doing that because I think right now for a lot of Palestinians, it is a time for collective work. It is not a time for individual platform building. It's not a time for things legible in this kind of sphere, and it's a time to collectively, like to collectivize and quite frankly, to get more militant, much more militant than we are right now. But I will read from the introduction that I wrote with Noor Hindi's edits, and then she kind of wrote the afterword, then I edited it, so it kind of is a bookend. I'll read from the intro, and then I'll read one poem from the anthology. We are writing from the event horizon of another world. Thus, the times are filled, impossibly, with love. At the center of every poem in this book, regardless of content or form, there is a love story of miraculous proportion. Here's the miracle of Yusuf Ezzeddin Saleh, a poet born and lived in 1928, who arrived in the US after being displaced in 1948 and 1967, whose poems come to us in the form of translations of napkin scribbles in papers inherited by his granddaughter. Here's the miracle of our only anonymous contributor, a Palestinian living within the Zionist state, brought to us via collaboration with Tarek Dobbs, the loving form of a conversation that holds space for the unsayable from within a regime that prohibits words like occupation from being spoken. Here's the miracle of Ashraf Fayyad, a Palestinian political prisoner whose poem on the virtues of oil over blood was quoted nearly entirely in the Saudi court case that sentenced him to death. Here's the miracle of his survival, despite, after international outcry. Palestinian Samud, embodied into a poetic courage that knows no border. Here's the miracle of queer Palestinian Southerner Rasha Abdul Hadi, whose poem, Finished with the Peace, connects to the lineage of gay Iraqi Jewish anti-war poet Siegfried Sassoon. Here's the miracle of poetry that interrupts failed notions of peace with insistence on Palestinian living. Here's the miracle of Najwan Darwish, insisting with every breath that we Palestinians remember the Armenians today and every day. Here's the miracle that birthed a response poem from Armenian activist Sophia Armen, who wrote in the middle of Nakba Day protests a poem that remembers Palestinians back. Here's the miracle of love as entanglement. Here's the miracle of all the Black radical poets who gave so much to our language of love and resistance. A love letter from June Jordan from Lina Khalif Tafaha, alongside a poem from Muhammad Khader invoking Dion Brand to give language to his Black and Palestinian family histories, alongside a cento by Zaina El-Sus comprised entirely of lines from revolutionary women poets. Here's the miracle of every call with Naomi Shihab, who contributed to this anthology not only with her poems, but with her loving advice and faith in us as editors. Here's the miracle of lesbian elder poet Michaela Cadeney Rain, who, after discussing her poem Queer Tatriz at AWP, tied a pink Tatriz bracelet around our wrists. Here's the miracle of our every gathering. How, in September 2023, just months before the latest phase of our ongoing Nakba, many of us gathered at the Palestine Rights Conference. How we laughed, read, cried, and loved each other in our aliveness. Here's the miracle of running across an impossibly crowded room to hug Maya Abu al-Hayat for the first time. Here's the miracle of the bird song that is her Arabic. Here's the miracle of bilingual readings with Yahya Ashur, the miracle of living Gazan poets. Here's the miracle of living poets older than the Zionist state, like Olivia Elias, who first began publishing at the age of 71. Here's the miracle of Huda Fakhreddin, whose work to not only translate Palestinians here, but build such spaces of safe gathering for us against an illiterate settler institution that spits on our graves. Here's the miracle of our departed beloveds, to whom we owe the entire weight of our poems. Here's the miracle of Murid Barghuti's buttons, of Mahmoud Darwish's horses, of Sami al-Qasim's son. Here's the miracle of Rafat al-Arir's kite, and Heba Abu Nada's starlight, of every protest in 2023 giving flight to their words. Here's the miracle of Salma Khadra Jayusi, of Rawi, of Mizna, of every grassroots literary movement built by and for us, without whom none of these poems would not exist. Here, poetry gives us the miracle of language, activated beyond witness and into withness. And with that, I'll read the first poem of the book by Heba Abu Nada, Allah yarhamha. She was killed by the Zionist state in an airstrike in 2023. This is one of the last poems she wrote, and this is one of the first poems that I curated and published with Mizna Online, the platform that we'll get into. And this is called Not Just Passing, translated from the Arabic by Huda Fakhreddin. Yesterday, a star said to the little light in my heart, we are not just transients, passing. Do not die. Beneath this glow, some wanderers go on, walking. You were first created out of love. So carry nothing but love to those who are trembling. One day, all gardens sprouted from our names, from what remained of hearts yearning. And since it came of age, this ancient language has taught us how to heal others with our longing, how to be a heavenly scent, to relax their tightening lungs, a welcome sigh, a gasp of oxygen softly we pass over wounds like purposeful gauze, a hint of relief, an aspirin. Oh, little light in me, do not die, even if all the galaxies in the world close in. Oh, little light in me, say, enter my heart in peace. All of you, come in.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you so much. That was just gorgeous. A great way to start. And Lana, carry on, please.
Thank you, Cole and Magli and the team. It's nice to be here with you. It's nice to be with my colleagues talking about this work that feels so meaningful to us. As heavy as these days are, these are moments that provide a little light. I'm going to read. I'm not a poet. I'm not an artist. I run the organization. And I guess some might argue that that's an art in itself, but I'll let others decide. I was going to read a piece from our upcoming issue that has a kindred theme, but to be quite frank, I couldn't get through this beautiful poem by Sarah Akant without crying. So I thought I'd spare everybody that. And I'm going to read some gorgeous short poems from a recent issue that we did on futurities that was guest edited, co-guest edited by Baraka Zaid and Aram Kavusi, former staff member Aram Kavusi. The first poem is by Mona Karim, the brilliant poet and scholar and translator, who's going to actually be guest editing an upcoming issue of ours. This is called The Senses. It was written in Arabic and translated from the Arabic version by Sara Al-Kamil. When cobwebs surround my nightmares, they erect settlements on the fringes of night. It is easy for me to draw a map. I fix the earth with my fingers and forge lines that mutate into threads and wrap around my wrists. The stolen look is a thin knife, thrashing about, grazing everything and missing. The woman whose soul has departed refuses to vacate the apartment. I tried to copy my life onto tracing paper. I kept the copy and left the original. That's Mona Karim. And then the second poem I'll read is by Haidar al-Ghazali, the Gazan poet who's in Gaza, who shared this beautiful untitled poem with us. And our assistant editor, Noor Hindi, did this translation. The only idea that he imagines, he whose head lies beneath the guillotine, is to not become a number. The only idea that he imagines, he whose head lies beneath the guillotine, is for the future to become one with no guillotines. For them to fashion from the timber legs for children who know nothing yet of walking. That's Haidar al-Ghazali. Thank you.
That poem is on the wall behind me right now, too.
Oh,
We can just maybe shout this out, the Radix Media collaboration with some illustrations of a guillotine in the Arabic and the English. Yeah.
Great. Nice to have to see it in print as well. Great. Well, we touched a little bit on the range that you all cover, which is just uncommonly broad. And I thought I'd start by asking, you, and perhaps Lana, you want to start with this, to give us a kind of verbal map of the territory you cover and how some of those intersections work.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's an interesting way to think about our work. I think we are, yeah, maybe a bit unusual as an literary organization, sort of plus a few other things. So yeah, Mizna is in our 26th year. It seems miraculous. And a verbal map. So literature is what really was the idea that Mizna was founded around. Co-founders Kathy Haddad and Salah Abudaya, with a cohort of wonderful artists and activists and scholars in the Twin Cities in the late 90s, kind of realized that there was sort of something missing in the landscape for Arab and other Southwest Asian and North African voices. And so they began the organization in order to publish the literary journal Mizna, and we've been doing that ever since. And soon grew to add film into the work that we do. So initially a video festival, and has become the Twin Cities Arab Film Festival. That's will have its 19th edition in next week. Actually, it opens a week from today. In addition to those things, really, so film and literature really anchor the organization. Those are our flagship projects, the journal and the festival. And around those, we really celebrate the authors in our community through, book readings when folks are in town. Journal launches are a wonderful way to kind of celebrate journals that we publish. Film series outside of the film festival. And then we can get into it, but we're sort of more and more kind of transnational and transglobal in the work that we do and the audiences that we reach. And really, it's always about centering our community's artistic voices, being a platform for contemporary, critical, experimental film literature and art, kind of our people doing work on our own terms.
Great, thank you. That was
Yeah.
really concise and shows us the territory. Moheb or George, do you want to add anything to the map? Or any details?
We probably will come up with things once Lena gets into some of that background information. There really is just so much. Like I think about art projects, and it really feels like a space that maybe covers a lot in response to the community. Over the years, coming to Mizna or knowing folks at Mizna and saying like, "What do you think about this?" Or here's what we do. Like, do you want to collaborate? And like, it's almost always like, yes, how are we going to, pull this off? So,
Yeah, I would love to hear more about the collaborations and et cetera at some point. But maybe it would be good to go to the images at this point, because some of those things may come out exactly then.
So this is a reading. We were recently in Los Angeles for the AWP conference, and we did an offsite reading, and so you can see rapt audiences. And we can go to, so the most recent 12 issues of the journal. So we're really, a print journal primarily. We were, as I said, kind of founded in the late 90s, and maybe anachronistically still very devoted to print, and care very much about making sure that the reading experience for readers is a beautiful one, and that the object really matches the gorgeous work that we are so privileged to publish. I don't know if George and Moheb want to jump in, but we can see kind of different themes that we've done in recent years as well. Most issues are themed.
And So there are about so our we publish twice a year, one in the summer, one in the winter. Our winter issues are always like curated around a specific theme, and that curation usually comes from just our relations, you know, being I love that we started with an event picture because I think Mizna is such a hyper relationally focused organization, and just being in continuous in spaces with our artists and community. You know, we get approached by people being like, "Oh, I want to do an issue on insert topic," or "We need to make some kind of communal intervention." In the case of the Black Sewanee takeover issue, for example, where we just completely funded an entire team of Black Sewanee creatives to do something on their own vision and on their own terms, and we were just the, yeah, the organization, just the vehicle, the partner, right? We want to intentionally bring a rotating kind of guest presence, whereas our summer issues are very different in our approach. Our summer issues always are general, open call, completely unthemed, completely no agenda. But oftentimes we've noticed in recent memory, themes just kind of naturally accrue with the issue. The work that we received for the issue. Like one of my first issues being full executive editor, my former position here, was this myth and memory issue, the sort of fourth one on the top row. And that was completely just, we had a cluster of poems that were really engaged in myth, like different Sewanee myths, different mythological spaces from the African continent, the larger context of, unsurprising, after our Black Sewanee takeover issue, we got a lot more just continuous submissions from the broader African context that we wanted to honor. And also memory kind of being another thematic at the core of a lot of these poems. And so we were like, this is so beautiful. Like we really should just address this. Like we put out a general call and our community responded. And this is our way of like listening almost and just being like, we want to adapt. The summer issues are very much adapted to whatever our community needs and whatever they prioritize sending us. This catastrophe issue, the second from the left on the top row, obviously that was a summer issue around genocide and the many genocides our community are resisting and fighting against right now. So how could we not do catastrophe in this immediate wake of October 23, especially? So yeah, so these are kind of natural themes versus imposed themes, if that makes sense. Is kind of how we've been going.
Can I ask a question about design? Because
Yeah.
the covers are all so striking, but they're also extremely different. And I wondered if they're all designed by different people and what the relationship of the designer might be to Mizna and to the specific issue.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. There are two different things going on. There's sort of the design of the journal itself, the mark, the branding, I guess you would say, of Mizna, and then the cover art. And so we, starting with the Palestine issue, which is the bottom rightmost issue, that was 2018. That was an anniversary or a sort of a marking of 70 years of colonialism in Palestine. We redesigned the journal, and we worked with book artist Alex Diarmond to do that. And we also rebranded Mizna, working with Lebanese designer Wael Murkos, and Murkos Key, his studio in Brooklyn. So we're really, proud of the graphics. I think they, speak to kind of what we're doing at Mizna that's sort of contemporary and also rooted in community and rooted in heritage. And then we work with an incredible curator and artist, Heba Amin. She's based in Berlin, and she's a visual artist and scholar, and she's the person who really selects the artwork for each issue. And so each issue that you see here is you're seeing the visual art of a really incredible artist. And in the interior is a spread of the visual art as well. And often an essay that that accompanies the art. So I happen to see that Amar Barada is with us in the audience, and Sarah Wrigley, thank you for being with us. Amar's beautiful tribute to Etel Adnan is published in our Etel Adnan issue, that upper right one. I guess you kind of can't miss her gorgeous artwork. So, so Heba really works to connect the visual art to the theme that we're focused on.
Thank you. That was
Mhm.
good to hear about that.
So this is our cinema issue, which was really kind of maybe the most ambitious thing we've ever done. We worked with guest editor Saeed Farouqi, who's a filmmaker and writer, and this was kind of a moment of bringing our two flagship programs together in one together. And he was really thinking about fragmentation in film, how film is made up of film stills that make up a whole. And so thinking about fragmentation and how it shows up in different ways in the journal, in the content, but also literally, physically in the materiality of the journal. So it sort of breaks out of the bounds of the print journal into all of these other printed treasures that you see kind of laid out here. So film tickets that were letterpress printed with a local press, and of course the gorgeous poster of an Egyptian film from the 50s, and on the back is a lovely essay about Egyptian film posters of the era, and all
Right.
held together with a belly band in a cover.
This looks so interactive. It makes you want to start unfolding things right away.
Absolutely.
Oh.
So, one of the things that George referenced and Moheb too is at Mizna, where we're doing these projects often, the film festival and the journal, that kind of have a long timeline to organize and put together, and at the same time our communities are often dealing with very urgent difficult traumas, and we are often needing to kind of navigate the sort of tension of the long sort of meditative process of doing something like a print journal, putting together a print journal with care and being responsive. And so, kind of answering the idea that we have been anachronistic in being so devoted to print, we finally have been publishing online through Mizna Online, and that really was sparked after October 7th, when Ismail Khalidi, the playwright and poet, wanted to write something for Palestine. And so he brought to us this essay, The Bringers of Violence, and we published it even while we were doing a million other things. And that really kind of launched Mizna Online as a site for more urgent and critical publishing. And so here's a sort of smattering of some works that we've published in the last couple of years.
And also just being a literary journal and devoted to uplifting literature. We always get pieces for every submission call that veer more into the realm of criticism, and not to just uplift this critical creative divide. Critics need to be creative, creatives should be critical and have a brain cell, but we've had to in the past also say no to some things that are just this is just not really what we do in our print journal. But this should be out and this should be urgently published online. And this is an intervention that makes a lot of sense. And so we also have gone in the direction of, prioritizing artist conversations, critical essays, reviews of very under-reviewed books in our communities, these kinds of more timely pieces and time-sensitive pieces, and how to do that with care, in a different mode, and that honors that urgency than and doesn't eclipse, the kind of quality and visual nature of our publication. That's kind of something we always work with.
And who does the editing of the website? Is
So
that something that you
we all
share?
have our hands dirty, actually, and all of us, every single intern, from intern to executive editor, all of us have designed, and yeah, and we just have to deal with the back end of the website, sadly. But I'm kind of in charge of. I'm the kind of central hub of Mizna Online and just determining a publication schedule and whatnot. And but it really is a collective. It really kind of is an all hands on deck effort every time, interns that have worked with us have come up with ideas of, oh, I want to curate this piece, or oh, I went to some event and saw this amazing poet. Let's solicit some work from them. And so I think that I'm just the hub, if that makes sense, and helps the machine keep going. But it really is kind of an all hands on deck effort from the whole staff.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
This is a really special project we did a few years ago with the Asian American Writers Workshop, who are, friends of ours, collaborators of ours. They brought this project to us in 2020, during lockdown, while we were still reeling from the murder of George Floyd. Bazid, who's an incredible poet and playwright, was wanting to honor the life of Sarah Hagazi, the queer Egyptian activist who had been persecuted in Egypt for being gay and then died in exile by suicide in June of 2020. And Bazid was, noticing that at a time when so many people were suffering and dealing with so much grief around COVID, so much grief around George Floyd's death, that we hadn't had a moment to really think about Sarah. And so Asian American Writers Workshop has a wonderful online journal, the Margins. And so we worked with them on this project to also bring a print piece to it as well. And so this is a collection of beautiful writings in honor of Sarah Hagazi that we published out in sort of an addendum to our regular journal. So it's a newsprint piece. And so you see the cover on the left and the back cover on the right, and in the interior is the fold out sort of poster in the interior with some of the words from her suicide note. I want sky is a line from it translated. And it was designed by Wael Murkos, who I mentioned earlier, and then the illustrations are by Haitham. I just lost his last name, but Studio Minjennek is his studio, and Bill Naes is an art collective that he works with. Haitham Haddad, excuse me. He's just an incredible artist. And we, it's just, sometimes we do projects, often we do projects, and I'm just sort of astonished that we were able to pull it off. It was a very challenging task, and I think lockdown in a way kind of allowed it to happen. We brought George in as guest as poetry editor for that. That was the first time we worked with George as an editor. And we'll be doing something kind of similar called the Gaza Folio that we're kind of in production on at the moment. And we're thinking it might take a similar newsprint form.
Great.
Do you want to talk about this, Moheb?
Sure. Yeah. This is an image of a kind of more local community reading that we have that came out of a writing collective that Mizna, I guess you could say, supports, but really kind of Mizna was the space that the local writing community, has always connected through. and it has, that group and its evolution and, its pull and gravity, has changed and morphed in different ways. And most recently, we had this like incredible restaurant, and the folks there, Babas, were really keen on doing something with us in their space, really beautiful space you can see here. And we just kind of tried to think about, well, what would be the best way to like leverage this and kind of make it a platform instead of it being sort of a reading series that we might just hold. I immediately thought of the Writing Collective, and maybe that could be a space for them to share their work, because that's not really a like facet of what they do normally. And they could be the ones to invite writers. And here we're seeing the amazing Majdaleen Shomali, who came through town with no voice, by the way. It was kind of that's a whole other story, but the delivery of this work was kind of incredible, because it was like voiceless but also incredibly voiced. So it's just an example of the ways that we do kind of try to work with different partners, and even just in simple ways. It's a quarterly series, and we just kind of negotiated like, okay, how much does the Writing Collective want to do, or what can they do, and what's comfortable, and how does Babas want to have us? And it's just sort of like an imperative for us, I think, to be doing this kind of work and in as maybe as light a lift as possible, but still really like see it through. I'm just kind of facilitating the emails and reminding everybody, hey, we're about to come to the next quarter. How do we want to do this? And it's just kind of a really like a community-based facet of maybe more formal things we do, like holding a reading for an author and their new book.
Great, thank you. Looks like a gorgeous space.
So fun, yeah. Amazing food.
And this was just to kind of give a breadth of the the readings that we do, often locally in the Twin Cities where we're rooted, but also increasingly around the country. So this was in Los Angeles in February 2023. This is Safia Al-Helu as part of a lineup of a fundraising reading we did for Gaza at Art and Archives in Los Angeles. So yeah, increasingly in the last few years, we've been, racking up, 3 or 4 readings around the country each year. It's interesting. We're part of a couple of sort of poetry and literature cohorts, and noticing that one of the things that we do, for better or worse, is do a lot of public engagement, and it kind of is a bit of a tension, because it takes from our ability to get the journal out sort of on time, I guess, but we also feel it gets really baked into what we do, that we're often doing engagement events, having authors have the opportunity to connect with readers in person, these kinds of things.
Yeah, it gives us a more performative aspect to the. Nice.
Absolutely. And then we're always at AWP. We have been for the last number of years, and increasingly other book fairs around the country and the world. So this is our 2025 booth with our friends Rawi, the Radius of Arab Writers in Los Angeles, and try to always announce our values.
Hooray. Yeah.
We were also a literary partner at AWP for the last couple of years, and will be again next year. That's comes with its own sort of tensions, institutional collaborators. On a big scale like that, we have to kind of navigate those relationships and make sure that our values are forefront, and we're not sort of compromising. And so this is Farid Matouk introducing the conversation between Lina Tafaha and Musab Abu Toha, and you see George on stage 2 as a facilitator. Moheb, this was in March of 2025. Moheb Abu Toha, the Gazan poet in exile who's in Syracuse, was meant to travel to AWP, but was advised not to because this was at the time when, ICE was beginning to disappear people. And so in the next slide, you'll see that he joined on over Zoom instead. And it was a really powerful reading. And, his last minute decision not to join came after a big backlash against the event. So there was a big group of Zionists who were sending thousands of emails to AWP to, call for canceling the event, the reading and dialogue, and thankfully AWP didn't capitulate. And then we do film, and so our upcoming film festival graphics are here. Mizna means cloud in Arabic, so we sort of have been leaning into that imagery these days.
Oh, great. Nice. Again, the graphics are striking, and the colors. Is this the designer that works with the journal as well?
Yeah, Wa'el Morkos, this is his brainchild, absolutely. Mhm. And in the next slide, you'll see opening night is often, a packed house. It's always a good time. The film festival is a week away, as I mentioned, and it's a beautiful program of contemporary films from all over the Arabic-speaking world. Plus, we have some Iranian films and Turkmen language films and other beautiful offerings. Some increasingly filmmakers in diaspora in the US are sharing films with us as well, and we'll be hosting many filmmakers in person. And doing kind of related events around the festival.
And you say it's a week long. How many films per day about?
It's about 5 days. It's 5 days.
It's a week away.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's 5. Yeah, it's basically a week long, or it feels like maybe 3 weeks long. Really intense.
Especially the weekend days, I remember like it's like back to back to back to
Yeah.
me and my friends who were there, like I flew out for it last year, and I am not a film person at all. Like I love film. I appreciate it. I am just not, trademark film person. I really had to just like three a day max. And if I did three films in one day, that's like, oh, that is like I have very low social energy at the end of it.
Yeah, that's impressive. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, seriously.
yeah, like and especially we had like a Palestine day, a day of back to back to back to back Palestine features, for example, and that was intense. Like, it was
Yeah.
well curated and really nice aesthetic variation and nice emotional arc, but it was like just the content is, there's no way for it to not be very intense.
Yeah.
We have about 20, we usually about 20 to 25 films altogether, and that includes short films that are often programmed together in a segment, or a short film will introduce a feature length. This is something that we've been doing for the last 4 years or so, free outdoor screening during the festival. So here, this is last year, we showed an archival Sudanese movie, Tajouj, on the banks of the Mississippi. So this is a bridge, of the footing of a bridge over the Mississippi, and we're screening. We're using that concrete as the screen, and it's really fun. There are probably 300 something people there, and we have DJ and food, and it's a fun.
Great.
Yeah. And I just added a few pictures at the end of some of the kind of ambitious visual artwork that we've done in the past. We are, like I mentioned, mainly film and literature, but we sort of can't help but be pulled into other genres and disciplines. We did a public art festival that used to take place in the Twin Cities for a number of years, called Northern Spark, that was dusk to dawn. And here in 2013, I think we did a graffiti project, kind of inspired by the Arab Spring. And so people could tag this wall with these beautiful designs from Egyptian and other artists.
Great. It's so colorful, really
Yeah.
It was
lively.
so huge. Yeah, I mean, it was a massive, wall that was like maybe 3 times the size of that wall that you were showing, Lena, with the screen.
Okay.
I mean, this was definitely during my beginning time with Mizna, but I see all of this programming that we're showing, and we're like a really small organization actually, and it's just it makes me kind of realize, or it just crystallizes that we really, I'd like to think, succeed in some of these projects in an excellent way, just because we bring in other people who know what they're doing to deliver. These stencils are from graffiti artists in Egypt, around the time of the revolution, and or the Arab Spring, so called, and that was a really, we couldn't have done that had we not had a community. We don't, the three of us, or the 12 of us who are there, however many, we're not kind of just all like we're so limited. I mean, as I think really committed as we are, we just are like really keen and excited to have moments where we can think creatively about like how are we going to make this idea happen, and who can step in as guest editor for an issue, or who will be an artist who can help us facilitate this project. And it's kind of that line between like ambitious, passionate, foolhardy, whatever, to like see some of these projects through. But even just the like community as sort of like an enabling and empowering force, beyond just an audience or even contributors, is really a big part of who we are, I think.
Great. Yeah. Nice.
And then this is a kind of a more formal gallery exhibition that we did with the Minnesota Museum of American Art here in St. Paul. For our 20th anniversary in 2019, we decided to do a group visual art show, pulling from the beautiful art roster of artists that we featured in the issue over the years. And it was co-curated by Heba Amin and Maymana Farhat. It was just, again, like I was saying earlier, every project we do feels foolhardy and sort of bewildering that we actually pulled it off. And this was wonderful, and also those things. Yeah.
And again, the range between the informal graffiti where it's outside and people
Yeah.
walk by and see it, and then the more sort of stately, traditional, where people can spend time in quiet with the work. Just wonderful, different sets of accesses.
Yes. And I think I noticed Ruan Abu Rahma might be in this call as well. And you see her work against the blue wall in the back.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
With Basil Abbas. And then just kind of ending with movement spaces, we at everything that we're doing, and Moheb kind of was talking about this too, where it's very relational. We're really in relationship with the artists that we present. We're in relationship with community and with activist and movement spaces. And so we were really proud to support the sort of alternative graduation for Palestinian and activist students in the Twin Cities for 2 years in a row. So this is the most recent cohort of activists. These are students who were actually arrested for occupying a building at the University of Minnesota and calling it Halimi Hall in honor of a Gazan
Amazing.
person. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yep.
That's a good example of something that just completely overflows in a way that connects all your all your activities with a wider group of people it seems like you're constantly bringing in different factions and different. That's really wonderful. You mentioned global, the transnational and transglobal. What kinds of things are you working with these days that would reach beyond the country, beyond?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. With um with Mizna Online curation, we've been in close touch with, I mean, part of it is just material, and not even necessarily about the literature per se. Like we have artists in our community who've had to self-deport, for example, that we're kind of continuously in dialogue with how we can support them, and help them with visa applications and material needs. And we always try to pay our Ghazawi writers, especially, as high an honorarium as possible. And maybe a prompt for the culture workers in this. I have a feeling that a lot of the audience are editors and people who do culture work, in some capacity. A prompt to ask ourselves, what if we added a zero to every person from Gaza that we work with's honorarium? And what would require us to change about how we work to do that? And the because I know I talked to Omar Barada as one of many people I've had this conversation with recently about this of even in Gaza, when people get money electronically, which already is a challenge, just a challenge in and of itself, to get money into Gaza. Then when people go to these brokers that, because Gaza has like been reduced and decimated by the Zionist genocide into a cash economy, when they have to then withdraw the money to get physical cash to literally survive at insane rates of even just small needs like flour, the cash brokers take at least a 50% cut. So another thing too is, again, if you can't add a zero to that honorarium, can you at least double it to make sure that the people who are getting the money actually get the amount you want to give them? So again, it starts with the material. And so when we think about that, one amazing, just kind of it happened so organically just through Fadi Judah and Huda Fakhreddin, just people in our community connected, amazing Palestinian scholars at Birzeit University in the West Bank. They connected them to the Mizna team, and we've been kind of in a continual dialogue, to support the translation of the work of Nama Hassan. She's currently a single mother and caretaker of 7 children in Gaza right now, a brilliant, acclaimed novelist and poet, just beautiful, beautiful writer. And a good friend of Mossab. Mossab was here in Western Mass last night. We had dinner together, and he was like we were talking about Nama, who's a good friend of his. Just gorgeously devastating writing, that she's been producing, almost like a genocide diary that she's just been kind of continually posting, throughout these past several years.
And that's a post on Mizna Online that you can read her work collected into
and curated with care and with uniting the Palestinian homeland and diaspora of this, this team of scholars between Gaza, the West Bank, 48, and then now diaspora, with Mizna involved in this project, kind of collectively editing, translating, and curating this work, because translating is, again, very, for better and for worse, deeply relational. Translations relationality can be very colonial, can be very, very hierarchical. And it could also, on the other hand, be very collaborative, very generative, very horizontal, very, and so trying to embrace and work across these different positional divides and say, no, actually, it's actually some of the only moments of optimism I've felt these past few years have been working on this Nama Hassan piece, to say, no, look what happens when we collectivize and when Palestinians get together to actually edit and translate this work across several different voices involved in this translation process and this editorial and curational process. And I just felt really honored that Mizna was the first folks that they reached out to for a US publication. And so we launched Nama's work in the US, and it's gotten a lot already, just tons of requests. Like some comrades in Australia like texted me like, hey, we're trying to get Nama like a artist residency now, and trying to get her like evacuated into Australia now because they found her work via Mizna, you know. And so these
And
are
that,
things that are very, very, very material,
yeah,
very significant. And so for us, when we say global, we mean, no, literally, it's like talking to our folks in Gaza. It's getting on Signal, getting on WhatsApp, and like literally just like saying, "Hey, what do you need?
mm,
What can we do?" You know, and actually having those conversations, and then just following up and doing it. We're not nearly as disconnected as colonialism and imperialism wants us to think.
mm,
And that's a product of our exilic condition. And so, how do we turn our work of Mizna into suturing those connections? That's something, again, the whole team in all of our ways, be it Noor Hindi, who does a lot of translation work, Moheb and Lana being like this, the local becoming the global, and how the hyper local work can actually be global in scope and in dreaming and in ambition and in touch as well. Another kind of more concrete example too being one of our staff members who lives in Beirut for a lot of the year. She and her friend base and community there are actually, and we're in the process of sending Mizna issues to Beirut to go to different art festivals. We have a continuous presence at the Cairo Book Festival for the past few years that we're hoping to, again, rely on our kind of Mizna community to help represent us there as well. So it's sometimes it also looks like just actually sitting at book fairs, and it's like less
mhm.
fun, obviously, than collaboratively translating across positions and languages and all that intricate work. But that's also equally important too, and that's how we just get the journal out and to the
Yeah. I mean, that too, it's, I mean, just to kind of try to give it its due, it's having faith that we can meet the moment, and that we can do things that we don't yet know how to do. I mean, I don't totally know about George and Lena's skill sets here, but none of us are expert translators, Arabic speakers, Arabic readers. We need to rely on others. We have like incredible accomplished translators who are working with us, for example, to translate Gazan writing for a Gaza folio that we're going to put out with Yahya Ashur as guest editor. Something that we were thinking, Lena mentioned, might look like that Sarah Higazi folio. But there came a moment in that project where the selection committee, which Yahya had a couple of folks on from Gaza, brought up the idea that maybe the entire thing should be fully bilingual. And that it's not just a platform for Gazans to be broadcast in English to this space where we're based, but that there might be a genuine curiosity and just kind of a ethical conceptual premise to have even the English writing put into Arabic. And that's a challenge. That's a huge challenge, and we're meeting it. We're figuring out how to bring in translators again who are all over. But it's not just, thankfully, of course, like it's not just Noor who would be going losing his mind doing that work. There's just so many moments, I think, where we're like, okay, let's open the door and see how we're going to go forward. I think too of like, since I've been I was with Mizna years ago, and then I'm back now, and since then I feel like I've really seen, maybe it was the Black Swan takeover, but in the last couple of open calls, there's like a lot more like Nigerian writing that's being, and it might just be through specific folks who have been published, but that's like a whole new space globally that we're a platform now for, and starting to have connections with, and to kind of just feel that we can like authentically connect with a whole new context. And how do we do that? Who do we do that through? it's a real, yeah, it's kind of a real precipice. I find it like really exciting and challenging, and we care so much about doing that responsibly and with care. And I think just that comes across and bridges a lot of things that maybe other spaces maybe are rushing into some content. I think we think a lot about how it's so vital that Gaza is on just everyone's mind, but where it comes through, and different presses who are putting out books, and there's a real learning curve if you don't already have those relationships, and
Right.
sort of really platforming it well. And, the forward, the introduction, how does it frame the issues, and that's kind of baked in here. And at the same time, also, we're sort of trying to meet the moment because it's vast. There are so many folks out there writing, thinking, producing work. So yeah, anyway.
And then again, we do this with each other and with, and the other folks I work with, for example, locally in Western Mass are Interlink Publishing, which, I think whereas Mizna is kind of a diaspora project, very much rooted
Totally.
in diaspora, not as some, oh, being neither here nor there, tired, framework, but just more of a diaspora as a wound, as a generative space, this is an invitation to rethink binaristic, neither here nor there kind of terminologies, neither English nor Arabic, to build from Edward Said's kind of contrapuntal framing as an invitation. And so now it's interesting that I've noticed on one hand, Interlink is more of we're trying to get voices from the region into an American context. And that is at the heart of their mission as one of the only Palestinian book publishers in the US. And whereas I think Mizna, just reflecting, has been such a different space. And it's more of like, no, okay, we are starting from diaspora, and our goal is actually to go back. Our goal is to return. Our goal is actually to form more meaningful connections to the homeland it's kind of like the reverse project, and kind of another non-binaristic kind of project that I want to shout out with Omar on the call too is this Another Room to Live In. Amazing, amazing anthology that Omar and Sarah edited, that's on my syllabus for my poetry class this semester. So of course I have it close at hand at all times, but just another, again, like, and Mizna was a co-sponsor for the book launch for this, for example, and because we've been thinking about our translation issue that's coming up, and a lot of the relational ethos of this book has been really helpful for me to keep in mind as Mona and I edit that translation issue, and that those complexities kind of come forth. So again, just a reminder that, Mizna is far from the only people doing this kind of work. We are in a large abundant ecosystem, and all of our friends are doing this work and just kind of doing that work together, and again, realizing we're not nearly as alone as colonialism wants us all to think.
That's beautifully said. It's beautifully said. And it seems like the future is going to be increasingly opening up that space and inviting people in, entering other people's spaces. Thank you so much, George and Moheb and Lana. Is there anything you'd like to add before we turn it over to a Q&A and hear from people in the listenership?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Magley, you can take it away.
Thank you all so much. This was such an amazing conversation to listen to. For our audience members, there is a link in the chat. If you have any questions for our guests, you can submit them and we will turn right over to you. The first question is from Mandana. Mandana says, congratulations on the distinctive voices and expansive and necessary projects you platform that benefit the literary community as a whole. Given enough money, and everyone should donate, and bandwidth, what new partnerships and/or projects would you like to explore as you look toward your 30th anniversary? Love the work you do, and so glad the NSE is centered on you today.
Ooh.
Thank you.
What a beautiful question and supportive comment.
Lana, yeah, like
I'm sure
I
we
know
all
that.
have
Yeah, Lana, what's our
dreams.
30th
Yeah.
plan, Lana? Sorry.
Well, I know that Wa'el Morkos, who we keep invoking, keeps texting me asking when we're going to do the next big thing together, and he really wants to design an anthology book. So that might be in the works for 30th anniversary. I don't know. But I think something that given a bigger budget, and philanthropy is just really a mess right now. I have to say, before I got on this call, I had a very difficult call with an advisor who knows about the philanthropic landscape, and it's just very um, capitulating to an authoritarian moment in a very scary way. But given kind of a dream budget, I think what we really need to do next is work more on nurturing artists and work on kind of fellowship and residency opportunities for artists, and that's something that we hope to sort of launch in the next couple of years.
And I mean, that can come through. I mean, to tie that really to partners, there are so many amazing spaces that, either they've reached out to us, we're just friends through, I mean, Minnesota, specifically in the Midwest, there's like lots of really kind of lots of different, types of spaces, whether it's a museum or, something that's, much more kind of publicly integrated. I really do love that idea of just connecting, but for that purpose, and because it just generates more work, for everyone, like to publish or to put, support, and it just like grows our community too. To sort of connected to that, I also just, want to say that, like, we're really excited to just try to put this journal in many new spaces. We have like a distribution fellow right now, who's just really incredible, and is going to help us do that really basic work of, like, we put so much love and attention and time into these journals, and we want to see them all over the place. And even though we'd love to see them globally, I mean, like right here in the US, it would just make such a difference, I think, if we were like partnering with bookstores or museums, stores, and to like put this out there. I was just in, New York for the Printed Matter George II art book fair, and there are just so much to tap into for like putting this journal in hands.
And I think just kind of there's part of me that's like, with listening to both of these responses, just kind of continuing what we are already doing. Like, we are a relation. So in a way, I love that I have no idea what the next 4 years are going to look like for us, because in a scary way, but in a way I like, obviously, authoritarianism, but also I love it in that, again, our community is so creative, and we were just talking to our some of our comrades down in Texas, where Rowie is going to have our gathering very soon, and it's just like people have been on the front lines in the Sewanee community down there and in Southern Spaces for years and years and years, fighting so many levels of fascism every single day, and just honoring those folks. And we are going to find a way through it, and we're going to find a way to resist and get creative. And I have faith in that, because Mizna is so relationally forward. And so in a way, it's like what the community needs is where we are going to go, and what our conversations and what our spaces ask of us. I have faith that we are going to find a way to just continue to deliver and continue to go. Some specific things I'm really excited about are, being the one of the only non-Midwestern. Actually, no, our team is kind of all over the globe, even though we're centralized in the Midwest. Being here in Western Massachusetts, and now joining Interlink's board myself, just thinking about, just the ways that, like, a very Palestinian, Sewanee queer women-led org like Mizna can help, like, can collaborate with, again, one of our only now very queer women-led Palestinian book publishers. And is there a future in which Mizna partners with Interlink and we co-produce books together? Open question. They also are really thinking about the spaces of residencies and retreats and workshops and whatnot. And that's also something we've been thinking about. And so I think there's going to, again, kind of be some natural, especially with how scarce our resources all are, natural just kind of collectivity and collaboration and partnership that I have a suspicion will just emerge with where I am, and yeah, this kind of local global kind of thing of Mizna being like each and every single person that forms the conglomerate of Mizna, we bring Mizna to whatever space. And so right now, so long as I'm in Massachusetts, Massachusetts gets more Mizna. And yeah.
Thank you all for those answers. The next question comes from an anonymous audience member. For Moheb and George, they're asking if your relationship to and work with Mizna has impacted your own writing and work. If so, how?
Oh,
George, yeah, please start on that one.
I mean, just yeah, I've always been a relational writer. Again, I feel like relationality again. I have to stress that's a very large word and it's a very complicated and very devastatingly ambiguous word. But I guess what I mean by relational is I think that for me, my best writing is produced in collaboration. And so I think that for me, especially having taken like I took a brief 2 week kind of Mizna hiatus a few like a month ago, and over that time I found myself still having Mizna conversations because in my theoretical writing time, what my writing needed was actually having certain communal touch points that relate to Mizna still. And I think it's a beautiful kind of in slash escapability of some sort, being like yeah, right now I don't know how to be a writer except to be in community. And so I feel like I would mourn the version of myself that just tried to only be a writer and tried not to like be as active in Mizzen community. And so yeah, just kind of continually immersing myself in the conversations that our folks are having. And for me, it's as exhausting as it is generative. And that's just how I work. And I think because of my slam poetry background, I've kind of always been in that sort of collaboration has always been a key component of my writing process. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. In a way, it's funny. I mean, in a way, I almost feel like I have the inverse experience, except when I look at the work, over the years and years that I've put together, it sort of tells a different story. It's funny. I mean, I came to Mizna initially like over 10 years ago, I want to say. And it was at a time where the work that I was really invested in wasn't explicitly picking up identity and examining it. It was sort of a side process, that is like the that was always going to be a part of any work that I create, being who I am. That was sort of and that's still my approach to thinking about any subject matter. We bring our positionality to it, we bring our own experience to it, whatever we're talking about. So, as someone who was sort of considering themselves and still do a nature poet, and the subjects I was really interested in working with weren't explicitly, oriented around ethnicity, identity, what have you. And in a way, I kind of wanted to I was really excited to have the opportunity to work with Mizna because I felt like that was going to be a space where I could very explicitly work on that other part of myself and my community, to kind of really be able to put my hands in to a collective effort that is a platform for thinking critically and creating depth and complexity around issues of identity and community and ethnicity and whatnot. So and yet at the same time, one of the first pieces I ever published was with Mizna, and it came out of a performance poetry show that was very much kind of playing with Arab American identity in the Midwest, and it was kind of a post 9/11 reaction that was working with like these crazy twin towers of a Budweiser factory in Columbus, Ohio, where I grew up, and the change in the symbolism visually of those towers and their smoking beer, gases. So I've always, I think, been in very productive tension with how do I, sit with all of the beautiful, rich subjects, existential, philosophical, political, emotional, romantic, that we all deserve in this world, and yet really understand how we come to those in our time through really different, politics and experiences. So I think Mizna has just been like so lucky for me and able to be able to kind of work within a space, explicitly working in that, and then sort of to get to have my own practice and find myself through the sometimes the gaps and the kind of gorges, the depths. So yeah.
Thank you for those answers. The last question is also from an anonymous audience member. They're asking, how can listeners support Mizna both in the Midwest and in New York City?
Subscribe to the journal, give gift subscriptions,
Yeah.
ask your bookstores and libraries to stock Mizna journal. I think those things, and read it.
Yeah. And read the people in it, there's so many great writers out there that have their own work that we intersect with.
And teaching, I think too. I mean, it is music to my ears whenever someone tells me something from a Mizna print journal and or especially online that's just free and open access and available to anyone with an internet connection. It's music to my ears when people tell me that Mizna's on their syllabi. Like that is like the most, I think the pedagogue in the core of my heart. This is like one of my biggest syllabi are like my language of love. Is something I've like recently realized. And I love giving my syllabi to friends and receiving their syllabi. And like every syllabus is a love letter to the future of a like discipline or an artistic tradition or in some cases a people and a movement and a lot of movements and an idea that will get us closer to liberation, and so yeah, that knowing that people are teaching us is really really amazing. And I've certainly just I'm in my like collapse the distance between my research quote unquote and my teaching quote unquote like era personally in academia, where I've just upfront disclosed to my students, hey, my syllabi are extremely biased and inflected of my own personal interests, my own aesthetic obsessions, my own formal interests, my own political commitments. And that said, I give room in all of my syllabi for the students to hijack, so to speak, for them to like redirect the course in their own ways and their own with certain, rules and structures and limits, of course, but and welcome them pushing back against anything that I give them. And so yeah, just finding ways to actually say, no, the classroom is a generative space, and the classroom actually deeply informs, for me at least, how I move through my writing and editorial work. And yeah, a lot of the reactions my students have had to this stuff that I brought in has been beautiful and inspiring. And yeah, and so it's I don't know. I think I really at the center of it, I think, yeah, teaching. Heart emoji.
I'll also maybe just add, just putting on my executive director hat, that, donating to to Mizna and other nonprofits that you find are doing meaningful work is so important, especially at a time when funding is so precarious and getting more so. I'm sure we will not be getting a National Endowment for the Arts grant in that, next year, if it still exists as an entity. So we really, small donations from the people who care about our work is the way of the future. And so small or big.
Great. Great. Well, thank you again, all of you, for just this really illuminating and uplifting conversation. And we'll end with a reading by Moheb.
Thank you. Yeah. I know, George, also you might have to split, so feel free to just, give a wave if I go on too long. But thank you really so much for having us, and it's just been like such a pleasure, and it's great to be able to step out of the work that we're like so consumed with every day to talk to each other about it. So, thank you so much for that opportunity. So let's see. I'm going to read you a couple poems from a work in progress centered on early immigrant Haji Ali, or Haji Ali, who was brought by the military with others from the Arab world to guide an ultimately failed U.S. Camel Corps, experimenting with imported camels to cross and dominate the Southwest. Fascinating character. So long ago, Charlotte Albrecht, who was on Mizna's board and a staff member, put this just subject matter of like early immigrant diasporas and, settlement as part of the American project, bringing immigrants in and what other immigrants showed up to support those immigrants. So that's just been such a fascinating subject to me, and sort of trying to explore what America means to me and my family. I sort of see this project as something kind of in between Michael Ondaatje's Billy the Kid and Collected Poems, and like Layla Lalami's The Moors Account, which is a fabulous book you should read. So here are a couple poems from Haji Ali, or Haji Ali. This one's called One More Ali Jolly Split. We left the ship and shared the night on seceded land, proud Texans told. Annexed land to secede again by a vast and virgin gulf, by contrast to the gaping, used-up Persian one at home, and this was home we'd stepped on now, and left our rancid shoes by everyone else's at the stately gates. A land that breathed the smell of feet, hung in the face like a rug from a newly dead relative put outside to beat and pass its soul in whole, a complete end-to-end turd in the swirling vacuum of the night, with bigger, toothier, sharper stars than we had in our citied lands back, not home. This land, a mat to possess, to prostrate yourself on. Allah, give me strength, bruh, with my spasm back from more journey into this bad deal. Al, most strong and base and inconceivable, most prayer, predator, and nothing falls in between. He had the habit of his elders, littering God at the start and end of every sentence, but nothing was in the middle. Speculation, gold dust, map pricks, desert. He was a middleman between nothings, for Occidental empire across the globe, for manifest incontinent destiny here at home. Inside him, a skirmish-level mercenary met a salesman, conversant in all the gods, and they went native and hybridized to something American. They went on the road. They went commercial. They went Humpty Dumpty. They went, I am the middleman, Musulman. I went and helped and sold them all. Haji Ali augurs water, determines future again. For them, a desert is just the useless space between future densities. Westbound just to cut down a legendary mammoth tree and build a mansion with in wilds. Between destinies and origin story, self-primeval. A gentle man of the eastern seaboard descending from the August Mayflower. However generative the desert is, mining, meandering, mind-melting is meaningless when you only came to reap, rope, and ride on. However virgin doesn't matter when you came to rape and leave the seed to go to seed. Their government knows better, but it's slow and far behind us in this land that is lined. This is territory. This is our job, to line up the desert haunches for others to brand the names of proprietors, of first impropriety out west here down south to pave the need for pastors and marshals of properties and meccas of gems and petrified wood. Imagine this. Desert then, rich in water, roots, and turquoise veins therein. One day they'll impel more water. One day they're going to express it all from their lips, thin, on money to make more shoddy money and shitty water. They're going to come back this way. We're presently making from the drawling, drop, jowling west and mess their past. We only have the one pair, at least I do. But by golly, as they say to say, this jolly will never go back to the near ancient east of easts. This live edge is fine, but compass wide enough for me, for mine. I've learned them to say, by God, Insha'Allah. And that's nice out here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just such a rich hour and a half.
Thank you.
Thank you so, so much. Thank you, George, Lana, Moheb, and Cole for truly such a wonderful discussion. We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art and Seeger Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program and making these daily conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 25 years. A donation directly supports our writers, staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And if you're free, join us tomorrow at a special time of 12 noon Eastern Time for a conversation with Elm Green and Jackset and Dan Cameron on the event of the Alice in Wonderland Syndrome on view at Pace Los Angeles through October 25th, 2025. And as is Rail tradition, you can now all unmute and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you all so much.
And thank you, Fong, as always. Hooray.
Hooray. Thank you, Cole.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Gail, and
Thank
Thank
you,
you, George.
George.
Thank you,
Thank
Lana.
you,
Thank you so much.
George. Thank you, Cole.
Cole, always thank you.
Thank you, Lana. Thank you, Cole. Hi. Hi, Norma. Keep up the good work,
Bye.
Cole.
Hi, everybody. Take care.
Absolutely.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.